In my personal experience, it seems that the third-person action game genre ages the worst in terms of quality. The genre's mechanics improved drastically in little time, making what was once a groundbreaking game completely redundant. So, it can be hard finding a good third-person action game that has stood the test of time. Now, as someone who has only recently finished Devil May Cry, I feel I can confidently say that DMC has held up pretty damn well considering its age. Is it some sort of masterpiece? Well, probably not today. But for the time, it was a big deal. It was 2001, still early into the release of the PlayStation 2. The console had some decent launch games, but it needed to prove its mettle with some high quality games, and DMC was one of them. It blew all the competition out of the water. Graphically, it looked amazing. Environments and backdrops had a great amount of care and attention put into them. Environments feel dark and atmospheric without it becoming dull and repetitive. The TLC of the world carries into the enemy designs. They look great, appropriately disgusting and haunting at the same time. And while you're fighting these beasts, the action runs silky smooth without any frame rate drops in sight. And that's a blessing considering how much fighting you actually do. Combat begins when you enter a room. The door ahead seals and you've got to fight a bunch of enemies to continue. That's it. In combat, you've got two types of attacks. Your ranged and melee weapons. Melee weapons work exactly as you would expect. Get in close with your enemy and hammer the circle button. Instead of using a traditional lock-on system, you'll instead attack the nearest enemy. From there, you can move the analog stick to attack different targets. Attacking and switching enemies is fast, fluid, and generally accurate. Your second type of attack involves using your guns. You hold R1 and press X to fire them. While holding R1, you can roll out of the way, which is really helpful to dodge different attacks. Now, though your guns have unlimited ammo, they're not particularly powerful and act more as a support weapon, killing weaker enemies while keeping the more powerful ones at bay. It may seem like DMC is a button masher since you only have two attack buttons. Nothing heavy or light. But it's not so much. A button masher allows you to keep pressing the same button uninterrupted. Here, the enemies can quickly block and counter your moves, so you have to keep changing different angles of attack. Thankfully, switching from hacking with your sword to firing off your shotgun is so fluid, getting hit rarely feels cheap, except for when it's the camera's fault. The camera's a bit of a mixed bag in the game. It goes for a very stylish look, and usually it works, but since you can't manually control it, it's easy to be clustered by enemies and have no idea what's going on, and it can be a real pain. Especially in boss battles, where the camera struggles to follow the action, leaving you in a lot of trouble. Of course, there is platforming spice throughout the game, but lo and behold, it doesn't suck. You can't fall off ledges, making it impossible to die of heights, and landing on a platform is pretty generous. To get into the detail about the level design, I have to talk about the story. You play as Dante, the son of a legendary demon slayer, who is asked by a mysterious girl named Trish to help seal a demon portal on an island. That's the story. Yep. There are maybe half a dozen characters that are actually important. Dante himself is overly cocky, but I wouldn't call him a douche, as many would label him. But the writing is cheesy at best and hilarious at worst. Thankfully, you can skip all the cutscenes if you don't care about Dante being overly smug. But what does all of this have to do with the levels? Well, you spend the entire game on the island, usually exploring the castle or the surrounding ruins. There are some light puzzle elements, but it just breaks down into picking up an item and backtracking where you need to place it. Yes, DMC is full of backtracking. Prepare to go through the same room a dozen times before you see the credits, but they throw plenty of surprises to keep you on your toes. There are hidden missions you can find, but they're very obscure objectives to properly beat them, so I never bothered. DMC's levels range in length from 20 minutes to only a couple. You get ranked on how well you performed in the mission, resulting in bonus red orbs. Red orbs can be picked up from downed enemies or scattered throughout the environment. These orbs can be used to purchase items and upgrades, such as healing potions and different attacks and abilities for your weapons. I've got no problem here, except it's very easy to abuse the repeating enemies and save system. Basically, when you save, it doesn't save the spot where you are, but what the items you've collected thus far. So when you load up that save, you have to replay most of the level. This includes fighting all the enemies again. This may seem bad, but you can exploit this by killing the enemies or even the mini-bosses over again. Take their red orbs, then save the game, only then to reset the level again and again until you have heaps of red orbs to do whatever you want with. This isn't some sort of obscure trick, and it isn't long until you find a part of the game which allows you to keep resetting the level or re-entering the same room over and over again. It's actually quite easy to do this early on, buying all the powerful upgrades and absolutely blitzing the entire game, especially if you improve your Devil Trigger mode. Devil Trigger is activated when you press L1. It makes you hit harder, move faster, and even regenerate health quickly. If you spend just a bit of time to improve the Devil Trigger, you become near unstoppable in combat. Even the last boss is not much of a challenge. Doesn't mean the game isn't challenging. You will die plenty of times before the credits roll, but after the beginning levels, it won't feel challenged again. So I recommend trying to do it without grinding for a more rewarding experience. To be fair, I can understand why people don't care much for DMC. It can be cheap in some boss battles, and the exploits can break a lot of the actual skill, but I had a good time. Something you can't find in a lot of action games this old. So yeah, thumbs up from me.